Our distinguished guest panelists all the way from Barbados, a lioness. When she walks in the jungle, the wolves and everybody just bow. She's very dynamic. It's very powerful. Please don't underestimate her when she takes the stage today. She's a sister to the heart. She cares about the well-being of the poor and the needy. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Sister Makala Beckles-Jordan, Gender Affairs Chairwoman of the National Union of Public Workers. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, bringing her opening statements, which includes an amazing presentation and, of course, Barbados' perspective on the whole issue, the whole topic that we are here challenging today. Please help me welcome Sister Makala Beckles-Jordan. And you can do much better than that. She didn't fly all the way from Barbados for that kind of round of applause. All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I'd like to thank the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Public Service Union for inviting me to come to be a part of this discussion. And I speak a little louder, sorry. I'd like to thank Sister Javelle Frank for having such confidence in me. I know that I'm limited to my time, so I would begin. Please bear with me. This is a very serious topic. We came here to find a better future, not to be prostitutes. No woman or child would want to be a sex slave and endure the evil that I have gone through. I am in fear for my life more than ever. I helped put these evil men in jail. Please help me. Please help me. Please do not let this happen to anyone else. These are the comments and a plea from a lady named Maria. She's a trafficking survivor. She was sexually exploited in her country. The first international agreement on the definition of trafficking, sexual exploitation, is found in the 2000 United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, because sexual exploitation is an organized crime. Trafficking persons shall mean the recruitment, transportation, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or any form of coercion, of abduction, fraud, benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation, and that is from Trafficking Protocol Article 3A of the Convention. I see you all writing. Some are in a daze. This information will be made readily available to Sister Javelle. I'll be sure to give her the document, and she can get it printed or placed on a website for you all. Sister Javelle asked the National Union of Public Workers in Barbados our stance on sexual harassment, sexual abuse, domestic violence, gender-based violence. We do not condone it in our country. We have just recently passed, in November last year, December last year, a sexual harassment act which speaks towards the depletion of sexual harassment in the workplace and in society itself in Barbados. We are now going forward to bring a discrimination act which will speak towards discrimination in the workplace and in society, because we have to bring an end to these issues that affect not only women and men, boys and girls across the society, and we filter that kind of behavior into the Caribbean and the region itself. Because if one country can do it, all countries can do it. It's not a one country effort, it's all the countries in the Caribbean as a region can do it. my address. The time for social justice and gender equality is now, and we must do all within us to make it our #1 goal and priority if equal opportunities are to be grasped within the public sector and in civil society. Despite all said, gender discrimination remains an utter reality in practice. The situations are worse in developing countries like ours. It has been very difficult to implement legal managements and political commitments as society strives for gender equality. The society is not free from cultural prejudice that tends to heavily curb women's freedom. Reservations in Parliament or civil society has been taken merely as generosity, but not as responsibility. Ordinary women suffer ill health, poor literacy at some levels, and exclusion from decision-making bodies. Most highest posts in offices and business companies are often held by men. No longer, and I repeat, not only from Barbados, from in the Caribbean, no longer can we sweep women's rights and female empowerment under the rug, as women in the 21st century are proving themselves capable and competitive to lead in a man's world. According to the 2013 Global Review, in available data, 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and sexual exploitation. Eliminating such violence globally requires intensive efforts, which led world leaders to establish an online tool that increased opportunities to exchange experiences and strengthen knowledge to prevent and stop violence against women, girls, boys, and men. Violence against women and girls is both a cause and consequence of gender inequality. We have to continue to challenge the deep-root social norms, attitudes, and behaviors that discriminate against the limit women and girls across all communities in the Caribbean have. This means educating and challenging young people and adults about the healthy relationship, abuse, and consent is critical. As you know, I come from a trade union, so I just would like the congregation to understand that all of the topics that we are addressing are trade union issues. Trade unions do not only represent public servants, we represent people. Women, men, workers, we all should see ourselves as people. Not that I belong to a trade union, I belong to this political party, the other. We are all one people. So that is all we have to focus on, being a people, being a nation, and addressing issues as one body. Working with your trade union movement and social partnerships like the UN Women Gender Rights Association, leading national teachers unions. You all have the National Council of Women, the SVG-PSU Women's Committee, to educate and improve the education of women in society, not only the membership, but the women in society as well. This will ensure schools and women in society, as well as the men in society, have access to effective and high-quality resources for teaching healthy relationships in classroom settings from the child level straight up. Because the Bible says, teach up in a child the way it should grow, and it will never forget. So if you begin to instill these values in a child from young, as the child grows older, the child would understand domestic violence is wrong. And we have to understand too that these forms of violence are often seen in the household first. It's often seen at home first. And we have to try to get families involved to realize that this is not right. Let us try to address the situation from home. So when the child goes out into society, they see something that is wrong, they automatically become the one to say, hey, this is not the way it's supposed to be done. And this is what stems a growing society, a healthy society. My time is so up. I can see that. So I'm going to start to move on. What causes violence against women? Violence against women and girls happen because women and men are not equal. We must understand that. In the strive for equality, we have to first realize we are not equal. And then we can focus on the equality. There are many different factors which determine whether an individual will experience violence. However, a recent study found that gender inequality is at a national level in education, access to employment, economic and property rights, freedom to marry and divorce, predictive higher levels of partner violence, and did settings where male authority over women's behavior is considered normal, and where violence against women was widely seen as acceptable. How many of you in this room believe that violence against women is acceptable? How many in this room even believe that violence against men is acceptable? Very well. While men also experience violence because of their gender, it is not systemic in the same way. The size and the severity of the problem places violence against women and girls on an entirely different scale. How can we prevent? We have now recognized what violence against women really is, where it stems from. Now we have to identify, how do we prevent violence against women and girls? Legislation alone is not enough. Legislation, laws is not enough. It must be promoted and enforced. Support services must be available to women escaping violence, including access to shelters. How many women's hospices do you have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? One. How many women do you have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? I leave that as homework. If you have one hospice and so many women and cases of domestic violence, how many people can this hospice hold? Do you see the need to have another hospice? Should there be more women's shelters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? That's a question I'll leave with you. Ultimately, the key to ending violence against women and girls is in transforming traditional gender roles and power relations, changing the attitudes and beliefs which allow violence to continue. And reports show that the most effective interventions to end violence on women and girls are, I soon finish, I promise, I soon finish. The most effective interventions are community-based, challenge attitudes, norms, and behaviors, include men and women in decision-making, empower women and girls, promote self-led change, make a long-term commitment to committees, gain support for traditional and religious leadership, increase awareness and understanding of the issues among government officials, support women's access to comprehensive services, health care, mental health care, self-help programs. These are some small but pertinent comprehensive services that not only women but men should be able to access. Should they find themselves in a situation where they have been abused, who do they go to? Where is the services for them to access? Who can I speak to in confidence that would be able to not only help me, but help push my situation to bring justice? And we have to look at that not only in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but from a wider Caribbean view. We also have brothers and sisters in other Caribbean countries where their form of violence and issues of this magnitude is blowing out of proportion. When you wake on the morning and you hear two more women have died, one in this country and one in the next, domestic violence. It's not pleasing. We have to look at society. Are we getting any better? Are we going to get worse? Is it beneficial to have such an onslaught on just one particular gender where this kind of violence is concerned? What will I, the individual, do? What can I do to help bring awareness or help bring an end to it? And we have to also realize that challenges remain, however, in implementing laws. Limiting women and girls' access to safety and justice. Enough is not done to prevent violence. When it does occur, it often goes unpunished. And that is where the problem lies. Imagine having a young daughter. She's 5 years old. She lives in the household with you. A family member or a friend sexually assaults her. At 5 years old, she's been sexually assaulted. The case has gone to the court. the next 15 years, when she's 20 years old, the case is now reviewed. When she is 20 years old, she has now taken what she has been through and placed it in the back of her mind where she cannot or she does not want to remember it. When she goes into society for the next 15 years, she's seeing her abuser. You know what she tells herself? This was my fault. Clearly this was my fault. He ain't get locked up for this, so it would have had to be my fault. And that's not the way that it should be done. Justice should be served. And I believe that enough is enough. The time is now, and this needs to end. We need to have a voice where this needs to end. And I have come to the end of my presentation. I have so much information to give, but so little time. And I thank you all for having me again. And I look forward to discussion. I always tell my participants in my presentations back home, ask questions, ask any questions. Somebody from this panel has to have the answer. And if we don't, hold us accountable to bring an answer. Email it to Javelle so she could come back and say, well, hey, now I get an answer. Look, XYZ. Ask questions. It's the only way you would learn. Thank you very much.